Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I'm Ben Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. Jack, we've got another exciting day ahead of us. Exciting podcast. You got a 3-notch beer in your hand, which is always good news.
I'm so excited for today's podcast. I think for the first time in a really, really long time, I'm drinking 3-notch beer, but that's not what I'm excited about. Of course, that is an exciting thing. But what I'm most excited about is that we have differing opinions on some of the things that happened in this game. I don't remember the last time we had differing opinions, so this one might get a little aggressive. We might call each other names, and I just want to let you know here before we go into it, I mean everything I say, so just get ready for that.
Yeah, I wanted you to know that just everything is very personal, right? This isn't about the game. This is mostly just personal insults back and forth. But yeah, we got some exciting stuff coming. Obviously, the Texas State win. And if you're in Harrisonburg, we can't plug it enough. Visit the 3-notched brewery there in Harrisonburg. We'll get there in November, it seems like, right? So eventually we are going to get there, which is exciting. Georgia State game. Maybe not the most exciting home game this year, but hey, works out for schedules.
Our whole thing with it too, our schedules it fits, and then not only we're making a weekend out of it. Where we're starting in Harrisonburg, watching the Georgia State game. Not sure what kickoff's going to be, and then we're going to have a really tight turnaround to get down to Chapel Hill and catch the JMU men's basketball team take on the defending runner-ups.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's going to be a fun weekend. I'm excited for it.
We'll see how
I'm excited to get into the Valley Collab House and check that out, but it's going to be a really great time.
It should be. And if you're in Harrisonburg before us this week, I know they have their Oktoberfest beers are here, which is very exciting. Every Monday, Minuteman Mondays. We won't be there for the Monday, so that stinks. But $3 pints on Minuteman, man, that's pretty darn good. Every Wednesday, they have game night. So tonight is game night. As we're recording, you're not listening to it probably. Well, actually, you can listen to it live, so maybe you are. And that's their $5 flagship pint. So maybe you can get this podcast in live and visit game night. Maybe you go to game night and listen to it not live. Hey, that's fine too.
Yep, and of course, football is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source. Your number one source for all your football betting needs this season. Sorry, something went wrong with our tweet about our broadcast being live, so we're going to have to resend that one out real quick. But football is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your football betting needs this season. You'll find the latest odds, matchup info, player news, and game trends. And as your continued source for all your sports wagering info, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, live scores, and giveaways all season long, folks. Always the fastest, always the easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports events: MLB, MMA, boxing, tennis, golf. We mentioned football, MLB postseason's coming up, NHL, NBA, they're tipping off, they're dropping the puck soon. So head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 100% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BELIEVE, that's promo code BLEAV, to receive every single reward that you deserve. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Hell yeah, brother.
Where are we starting this podcast off with?
Well, they beat Texas State 40-13, so I guess we can start there with a quick little game recap. It was rainy, right? You got Hurricane Ian, as some like to say, that was coming in there and still impacting really the whole East Coast. It kind of just ended here where I am near DC, like today. So there was a lot of rain, a lot of wind, gross weather. I thought the game overall was incredibly sloppy on both sides. I didn't think it was really the cleanest game, but JMU dominated in the trenches. We'll get to some of that later, and it was a good win. They covered the spread. They're 4-0.
They did cover the spread. They're 4-0. They're the second most, well, depending on which sports book you use, they fluctuate anywhere from being one of the most profitable to the second most profitable team in the nation. I don't know what's going on with our Twitter right now, so apologies that I'm half in and out right now, but we're back in it. You can also tune in on YouTube, so that's besides the point. They're the most profitable team, one of the most profitable teams in the country, 4-0 against the spread, 4-0 straight up. really solid stuff. And I mean, it was a sloppy game to an extent, and I'm glad you brought this up so soon because I'm not 100% I thought it was not a terrible game overall, all things considered.
What did you like about it?
I liked Latrell Palmer, loved
Okay.
Latrell Palmer. And if you go and subscribe to our Patreon, I did a full film breakdown. His evolution as a runner has been amazing. There's been so many times in his career where he's been the bigger, faster, stronger guy on the field. And we've likened his play to that of Marshawn Lynch at times. I dubbed him the Manimal during the weird COVID season. Like, there's a lot happening with him. And he used to just hit the line of scrimmage and run hard, right? He wouldn't necessarily take that extra second to find a hole. He was doing that all game. He had 27 carries, over 100 yards, 3 touchdowns. So I loved what I saw out of him. I loved what I saw out of the running game altogether. You knew Texas State was going to key in on that. You knew that was the go-to game plan for the Dukes this weekend with Hurricane Ian in the Valley. So you knew they weren't going to be able to pass it all that much. And they ran it really, really well. A fumble here, a fumble there. That was to be expected considering, it's freezing cold and it's wet and it's terrible conditions. And the passing game wasn't terrible. 2 great connections with Chris Thornton. Reggie Brown had a solid night. Todd Centeio did throw an interception, but he still finished the day with 257 yards, 46 long. Chris Thornton got back, nearly broke 100 yards. Like, I don't see how you can look at the box score, even watch the game, and tell me that was, all things considered, if you put this game in a vacuum and it's perfect conditions and all of that, yeah, it's not a good game. But they were playing in the middle of a tropical storm, tropical depression, and you're telling me that wasn't good enough. No, I mean, you look at the box score, and you almost had a receiver that broke 100. You had a running back who broke 100 yards, had 3 touchdowns, and you had 3 other guys have solid games, and you were without Kalon Black. You were really without Percy. So your 3-headed monster of a running back room goes down to 1, and then your star quarterback completes 15 of 25 for over 250 yards and ran for a touchdown. Come on. It was a good game.
It was fine. Like, I thought it was like fine. There were some people who were like, that's unacceptable. I wouldn't say it was unacceptable. I just thought it was like kind of sloppy. The interception was horrible.
Yeah.
He stared a guy down. Like, he didn't even have to jump the route. Had already jumped it. The 2 fumbles is alarming. Palmer fumbling again is alarming. Obviously, he rallied really well after.
I was really
that
sad
one didn't
after
seem
that
that didn't seem like a wet ball fumble. That was like he got hit hard, the ball came out. Like, that one to me, same hit, not wet. I still feel like the ball comes out. Which there's no way to know that, right? But
I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, I just am chalking it up that the ball was wet, so it makes it hard. Like, yeah, we don't know. But, I mean, it was a perfect tackle, helmet on ball, and it's just going to pop free every time.
I thought it was fine. They averaged 4 yards a carry, but again, like, they kind of knew they were running at most plays and leaning on the running game. I'm fine with it because Texas State isn't good. So, like, we'll get to this in a little bit. It kind of felt like a CAA game, to be honest with you. But they just sort of controlled the clock, controlled the game. They did make a bunch of mistakes, but they also, they forced 4 turnovers that kind of made up for it. So I don't know. I feel like the offensive performance gets masked a little bit by the defense legitimately operating as one of the most efficient defenses in the entire country right now. But I thought it was like offensively, it was fine. I don't think there were like any major concerns because they knew what the defense was going to be able to do. So I think all things considered, yeah, I was fine with it.
Yeah. Also, Texas State's defensive line wasn't terrible.
Their defense is definitely better than their offense.
Yeah, let's get to that real quick. Is JMU's defensive line, and this answer is kind of like yes and yes to both, is JMU's defensive line that good, or is Texas State just terrible?
I think maybe I was going to say this for later, but I'll maybe throw out some stats now. Texas State really sucks. Like, they're horrible. So, like, I know a lot of people, like JMU fans, like the Sagarin ratings, right? Because it's like a predictive metric, and it often shows JMU, even when they're at the FCS level, being better than FBS teams when they were at the FCS level. But so they rank, right? The Sagarin ratings ranks, I think it's everybody FBS and FCS, and Texas State is 161st. So I'll let you guess, how many CAA teams do you think are ranked above Texas State in the Sagarin ratings?
Got to be Delaware. Got to be Villanova. I'm gonna go with 4.
It's 5, and Villanova is actually 3 below them. But like,
Whoa, Villanova's having a
Delaware's
bad
like,
year.
I haven't paid any attention to be honest.
Neither
With you.
have
I don't know. But I think they're probably fine. But Delaware's like 40 spots above Texas State. Like Texas State is bad, really bad. Their wins are what is it? It's like Nevada and they beat FIU or something. Like they haven't
Yeah,
done.
one of their wins was like not good.
Or maybe
Was
they got
FIU.
blown out by Nevada. Actually, it was some. Let me double check Texas State schedule. But they have not been an impressive football team.
They got blown out by Nevada because one of their wins was against Houston
That's what it was.
Baptist
Yeah,
Christian,
yeah.
and their other
Yes.
win was against FIU. So they
Yeah, so
lost to Nevada.
They got blown out by Nevada, blown out by Baylor, blown out by JMU. Like to me, they're a team that seems like
We'll
they're on the
beat
verge-
Miami in 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. They seem like they're a team that's on the verge of a coaching change. Like I'm not impressed with what they're doing at all. The program's in a bad spot. So when people are, I don't know, talking about like how impressive it was or whatever, I think JMU looked really good, but it felt like a CAA game because Texas State is literally CAA level. Like it's a really bad football team, one of the worst teams in the Sun Belt. So I'm not reading too much into 3 home wins. One of them being like maybe Middle Tennessee's okay. One's Norfolk State, one's Texas State. Like I think the App State game is still the one that I point at and like, all right, I think they can be special because of what they did in that one.
Can I say an unpopular opinion right now on the podcast?
Yeah.
I don't think Middle Tennessee State's good. Like I
don't think they're very good either.
Like I think metrics are really like hyping them up and helping out JMU's case right now because they beat Miami. But I think that was a flash in the pan. They didn't look great against UTSA. Granted, UTSA is like really good. They have a stud quarterback, but Middle Tennessee didn't look great against them. So I think Middle Tennessee is a kind of a fraud.
And some of the metrics don't hype them up. Like they're 88th in ESPN's FPI and 97th in SP Plus. Like I think the fan base is like, look at what they did to Miami. Yeah. And I think some of it is like, well, they might actually suck. Like they might be better than 30 other teams. They're not like a complete pushover, and beating them by 37 I thought was impressive because they do have some guys on offense who are pretty good.
Yeah.
But like I don't think scoring 44 against them is like a shocking total really at all.
Especially in week 1 against a team that lost like a lot of I think they returned over 50% of production, but let's say they lost 43%, like that was 43% of major contributors. So yeah. It was a new defense.
Exactly, yeah. So I mean, I think some of that makes sense that JMU's done that. Like I'm still impressed with how JMU has played. Yeah. I think they played well enough. Like ESPN has them 16th in strength of record. Like the teams they've beaten, the way they've beaten them, I think has been impressive. But I still maybe have some questions overall about, what they're going to do the rest of the way. Because we talked about this at the beginning. I was texting you about it this week. Like coming into the year, we were like, they could be 5-1 or something in that range by homecoming against Marshall. But then the rest of the schedule is really hard. And I feel like JMU fans have completely forgotten that we all thought the rest of the schedule will be hard. And they're like, well, I guess we're going 11-0.
It is hilarious because at 4-0, you have a win against the bye week. You have a win against Norfolk State, Middle Tennessee, and a bad Texas State team. And yeah, this was the point of the season where we were sitting here and think, wow, there's a good chance they are going to be 3-1 after Texas State, 4-1 after Arkansas State.
Right.
Like, I mean, not even a good chance. I believe both of us were on the podcast when we did our schedule prediction, and we both were sitting at 4-1 after this next game. Like, this isn't – the surprise is App State, and the surprise part of it was the comeback part of it. I don't think JMU fans are this hype about the team if they didn't come back, which is weird because it's the same team that got down into a 28-3 hole. It's kind of a weird feeling. But I think if JMU won a 24-17 grinded out game against App State, I don't think JMU fans are as excited about this team right now. Which, I mean, it's great that JMU fans are excited about it. But I will say, as someone who's now sitting here and I'm thinking there's a good chance they go undefeated because not only have they won these games, they've looked really dominant in all of them except for the App State game. But we talked about it last week. Honestly, they looked dominant for 52 minutes. So they're playing a lot better than I expected. So that's what I'm excited about. It's just funny when JMU fans point to the record and they're like, look, we're 4-0. Yeah, we kind of expected this. From a record perspective, this was expected. From a performance on the field perspective, okay, yeah, I'm a little shocked by what we've seen. I didn't expect a 44-7 blowout of Middle Tennessee, but I expected this rough record right now.
Not like stunning, right? That they're because there was really only the one game that they were an underdog in.
Yeah.
So
and they weren't like a major under. They weren't. I don't think they closed at like 6.5. Yeah, like right. Not a crazy upset. They weren't like plus 1,000 on the money line. They were probably like plus 275.
And they were favored by like 40 against Norfolk and like 21 or whatever against Texas State. Maybe
22, yeah.
22, yeah. So it was like, I don't know. None of it's like overly shocking. I did want to highlight, I thought Grant Johnson had an interesting piece with the Breeze where he was writing about JMU like being able to win with its C game, which I think is a super fun discussion. Because it's like some of it they were using the Texas State where Signetti was like coming into the year, hey, we can't win with our C game against Sunbelt teams, and then they at times like especially offensively had their C game against Texas State, but I think it maybe lacks a little context there that like Texas State is literally a CAA team in terms of ability, so it's not like Delaware's better than them. So I think that's kind of where it gets hard to say that they can still win with their C game or their C plus game. The other thing that I think bears repeating and bears credit, like it's hard to say anyone on the team has had or the whole team has had its C game when the defense literally ranks out like on ESPN's efficiency metrics as the most efficient defense in the country. Like the defense is playing so well, and they have the two short fields against App State. Like other than that, they've been pretty incredible across the board. The defensive line is good. The secondary is better than we thought. Linebackers have been awesome. What Jalen Walker has back-to-back weeks with interceptions and took one back for a touchdown against Texas State. So like the defense is really good, like exceptionally good. So I think it's hard to give the team a grade of like a C when the defense is playing out of their mind is mostly my take.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, their offense has played at their C plus game.
Right.
Overall, the team, if you average that out, it's a B plus game because the defense is just playing out of their gourd. Halloween season, got to bring up gourds. Shout out pumpkins. But I lost my train of thought. I went off pumpkin. Oh yeah, they're playing with their C plus game, but overall it's a B plus game because of what the defense is doing.
Yeah, I was kind of going off of that. I was just going to say though, like if they play sort of more of a C game, like I don't know. I think pretty much every game the rest of the way to me is as tough as Middle Tennessee and Texas State or tougher. I don't know. If you would agree.
Think that's a crazy take considering Texas State is one of the worst CAA teams. So like I would assume every game from here on out is tougher. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like this. We can do our weekly refresh if we want to, where we like look and see if we've changed our minds dramatically. But like I don't know, 4 of the next 5 are on the road. You got Arkansas State, Georgia Southern, Marshall, bye week, Louisville, ODU. That's kind of a hard stretch.
I think you're overhyping Arkansas State, and we're going to get into their preview. We're going to break down that game a little bit, but I think we still have a few more things we want to hit on Texas State. Yeah. I think you're getting a little bit ahead of yourself here. I don't think Arkansas State is good, and you think they're good. So that's
not about good, but I think they're –
you think they'll provide more of a test than what we've said? I don't think so. Like I think the hardest part of this game is going on the road, but we'll break that down. First – just look at this lower third that's going to pop up for you. And this one's specifically for you. And I'm going to hand you the floor.
Oh, man. As a Chauncey Logan truther, this is one of the most exciting days ever. He's in the 2 deep. He's a starting corner now. I think I was listening to an interview. It was like Noah with the DNR was talking to Dave Riggert on the radio. And Dave Riggert pointed out that Chauncey Logan does not have a tackle yet in his JMU career, but he has 5 pass breakups, but he doesn't actually have a tackle, which that was kind of hilarious. But he looks really good.
You know what that tells me? He's locking down his wide receivers so well they're not even getting catches.
He's been awesome. He's been really awesome. So it's a great day for me because I've been tooting his horn for a while, but I think he helps the secondary because we talked about corner maybe being a concern, and when you have a freshman who's playing really, really well with good size and stuff. It helps. But the D line's been incredible. I know you kind of highlighted them in that film review that you did. What did you see from that group this weekend?
It was and what I mentioned earlier, it was kind of a mix of Texas State's game planning, Texas State's offensive line, Texas State's play design was almost like woefully bad that coach should be fired on the tarmac as they're leaving the Shenandoah Regional. Like, there were points where JMU brought like 3 rushers to one side for 2 offensive linemen, and then the running back was supposed to pick up the free blitzer, but either like it was bad coaching or the running back just is incapable of picking up the blitzer, that he would just miss completely and the whole thing would fall apart. There was one play where, in theory, it makes sense if you're like a good team, but Texas State's not. There was one play where they have 2 linemen go out to block the linebackers, so they just don't even think about the first, like they don't even try and chip the defensive lineman who's directly in front of them. They let him just run scot-free past, and the fullback is supposed to pick him up, but he's already 3 yards into the backfield before the ball's even handed off, and these other 2 linemen are up on the line. The play designs made no sense. With that being said, according to Jamare Edwards, he tweeted that back at us when I was asking what should we break down. Apparently Texas State was doubling them, tripling them, throwing max protect in quite often, and they still finished with like 4.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, a bunch of QB hits. So this defensive line is just they just have such a high motor, and they don't quit on the play, and they have elite level moves where they are able to bull rush the offensive lineman up 2 yards and then hit him with a dirty spin move to the inside, and it just leaves a Texas State lineman who isn't, it's not an Alabama lineman. So they're going to leave him in the dust, and they just kept doing that. And that's what we've seen all year. I mean, Middle Tennessee doesn't boast a gnarly offensive line. Norfolk State clearly doesn't. App State didn't either. App State had an undersized offensive line too. So they just have beaten up on teams.
Arkansas State's got some big offensive linemen.
Yeah, they do, but they're not good.
All right, fair enough. I thought one of the other things kind of going off of the play design when I was looking at your film breakdown that I thought was funny is like there was a play or two in there where I was like, oh, cool. It's Texas State. They're running, some sort of zone read. So you read the defensive end, and if he's crashing in, you pull it. And instead, like the quarterback doesn't move, and it clearly wasn't. They just didn't block the defensive end. Like if it was, it might have been an okay design because like the defensive end was crashing in. He would have wanted the running back. They could have pulled it and ran. Instead, the guy just gets annihilated, and I'm like, what? Who is designing this? That there's just like a defensive lineman down in a stance is unblocked on a rushing play. It was some crazy stuff that they were eating up. But yeah, I also thought the other thing that was super impressive is when they did have the max protect. Just everyone's motor is really impressive, where they like won't stop on the play, which I think you pointed out pretty well. Like the coverage is good, but they're in there for a while where sometimes they had a little time in the pocket because, they would max protect or whatever and try to give them some extra time, but JMU would drop 7 or 8. And then they're still getting home with defensive linemen who just don't stop, which would suck if you're an offensive lineman and have to like watch that back in film. It's like, 5 of you plus a tight end or whatever. And you got 3 or 4 rushers and they're just sort of bodying you over the course of a couple of seconds. So I've been impressed with the defense. They're playing unbelievably well.
Yeah, I've been kind of low on the secondary, but I think now I'm going to eat all my words. And for the time being, I'm sorry, secondary. The defensive line is so good that you guys are looking really good. And you guys were really young, but Chauncey Logan has stepped up. Brett Austin has stepped up, and a lot of guys across that secondary have stepped up. Sam Kidd has been phenomenal at the safety spot. Really, really fun to watch.
I thought Chuck Winnicki was pretty good, and we haven't mentioned him a lot, but he had one hit where there was like a screen pass. It was like a 3rd and 13, so I was rewatching it back today, and I thought they were going to get a first down on this screen, and then he comes screaming, out of the secondary and nails the guy and lights him up and stops him like 5 yards short. It was just like, it was one of those games that I feel like JMU had a lot in the CAA where you'd watch it and be like, oh yeah, like that guy's on the defense and he's really good, even though we haven't focused on him. There was one where there were so many guys, they like threw some passes. Like Wayne Knight had a first down. It was like, oh yeah, I remember the true freshman running back that they like or whatever. Had a nice little thing. Solomon Van Horst, welcome back. Right, there were just so many guys. I was like, oh yeah, they also have that guy.
Oh, I forgot he's on the roster. I forgot.
That's a 46-yard catch, and I forgot they had him.
Van Horst was really good. Van Horst is really solid. But anything else you want to hit on from that Texas State game? I think we've covered a good majority of it.
Yeah, I was also, I guess the last thing, kind of impressed by the opening crowd. I was ragging on them a little bit in the middle of the week about
a little bit.
There weren't going to be people there. Pretty solid for like opening kickoff. I was impressed. They seemed pretty engaged. Family weekend, but the crowd was darn good, which actually gives me some hope that our November 19th trip, even though it's like right around holiday break for students and Georgia State's 1-4, could be a pretty exciting little crowd. We'll get to that in Sunbelt Pick'em. I hate Georgia State, man. They're ruining my life.
Yeah, you were really high on Georgia State.
I can't pick their games though. They beat Army last week.
Oh man, this sucks. Now, of course, before we go further into what is happening, it's time for our 3-notched preview. Is Arkansas State good? I'm going to break down some stuff here, and then Bennett, you reply or do whatever you want to do, but just kind of the overarching stuff. Butch Jones is in his second season at Arkansas State. He's 4-13 with the Red Wolves, former Tennessee head coach, also the Red Wolves. Weird name for a FBS football team. They're 2-3 this season, 2-0 at home, 0-3 on the road. Johnny Lang is kind of a stud, especially on special teams, but he leads all rushers, 265 yards with 2 touchdowns. James Blackman is the main quarterback. Another quarterback has stepped in and thrown 15 attempts, but that's probably just in spot minutes, as James Blackman has gone 108 for 155 for 1,212 yards, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception, averaging over 240 yards per game. And they have a couple potent receivers in Champ Flemings and Sado Traore. And I think this might be one of the better receiving cores that this JMU secondary has gone up against, as they have more than just one threat. They have 2 good receivers and a third guy that's pretty solid. But here's where I think me and you differ in what we believe if this Arkansas State team is good. We look at 2 different advanced analytics. Mine are telling me that they're the 119th best team in the nation, 103rd offensively, 125th in defense. I'm looking at EPA, which is expected points added, which is an efficiency metric, and it measures per snap, per play, what is expected and then what actually happens. They're also minus 7.2 in SP+, which is 94th in the nation.
Yeah, I think for me, the only thing that really scares me is the offense and the big names, right? Like Butch Jones, I think, is a very capable coach, which he's proven.
Yeah, he's proven with his 4 wins at Arkansas State.
That's not fair. He's had at least a 9-win season at Central Michigan, Cincinnati, and Tennessee. So I think he's going to turn them around, but it is year 2 of the rebuild. So are they quite being turned around? I think you're saying no, which is probably fair. But James Blackman, former Florida State starter, there's talent there. Johnny Lang is good on special teams and offensively. I think they have some pieces there that they're like a step above Texas State. Are they good? Probably not. But they have, 2 games I throw out. They played Grambling. I'm throwing that one out because it was an easy win. Ohio State was a tough loss, but they played Memphis.
So 1-2.
Old Dominion, and they played someone else, I thought, that I'm forgetting now. But they played Memphis pretty tight and should have won that game. And then Old Dominion was a game that they sort of blew that they could have won. There was ULM last week, I think, that they beat at home. So they've been okay in those 3 games. So I think there's potential there in JMU. It's only their second road game of the year. So I think it's a little bit of a test.
Yeah, that's a good little quick preview, 3-notch preview there. I think it will be a test as well, but maybe I'm too high on JMU now. Maybe I've drank the purple Kool-Aid and I believe that this team is going to be amazing. I don't see this Arkansas State team giving JMU too much of problems, even offensively. This is an offense that is 103rd in EPA this season. Like, what do you see in this offense? Yeah, they have a couple potent receivers. Johnny Lang is good, but JMU's rush defense, in theory, will just take him out of the game. It's going to be Blackman having to win this game on the play of his right arm with his receivers. Like, what do you see that Arkansas State will be able to do that will take advantage of JMU's weaknesses?
I think that having Blackman as like a legitimate quarterback who's probably maybe even a little underrated in the Sun Belt helps a lot. I like that Butch Jones has had a bunch of success, but you look at Blackman, he's been pretty good this year in those games that isn't playing at Ohio State, and I think that shows me a little bit. Like I just think they've kind of been tested a little bit. He was 25 for 34 for 275 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions against Memphis. Their defense let them down in that game. ODU, which I think has probably a decent defense, and that's sort of what their calling card is this year because their offense isn't very special. But he was 23 for 35, 285 yards, a touchdown and an interception. And then you look at what he did last week against ULM, 25 for 32, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. So I think you can kind of pencil him in for 20-something, for 30-something, for 2-something. I just think he's good enough to give you a solid showing. I think the concern is you have to work really, really hard, and it's almost impossible to find any metric that says they're even respectable on defense. And they're getting like a massive boost in some of these, and I think they probably weight it down a little bit. But it's most metrics, at least that I'm looking at, that ESPN has, some of these efficiency ones, have them as like a top 5 special teams unit. And I think that's because they've taken a kickoff back or a punt back for a touchdown. They've got good numbers there. Some of that's Johnny Lang. If you can take him out of that aspect and it's just offense versus defense, I have a very hard time actually seeing it being competitive. I think it's a game JMU probably wins and has a good chance of covering. But there are certainly some aspects of it, like being on the road. You have a really qualified head coach who I think will make them a lot better. And then you have a quarterback who had starting experience at Florida State. That's like, all right, there's a couple of things there that interest me that like Middle Tennessee didn't really have and Texas State didn't really have.
Yeah, this game also prime time on NFL Network. Yeah. So that adds something to it as well. Not only are they traveling, but this is like the biggest game JMU has played in since the national championship. So a lot of different factors to it. And yeah, I mean, that's all potentially going to happen. I just have no faith in Arkansas State. And I think because their defense is so bad, I think JMU's offense is so much better than their offense that JMU will be able to win. If it comes to this type of game, which I don't think it will, JMU will be able to win a high-scoring shootout.
I think so, too. I think it'd definitely be it's a good matchup for him. Like I kind of like it more almost than some of the other matchups. Like I kind of like that their defense is bad. Like that one seems like, all right, JMU's probably got this in the bag.
I also really enjoy that this is a really good barometer. Like, to me, App State is almost an outlier in what happened.
Yeah.
You don't get a good feel because it was 8 minutes of terrible football, and then JMU figured things. Like, that game was really fun as a fan. But as you're trying to, like, figure out what this team is, to me, it's an outlier. They have a lot of grit. They have the indomitable will or the indomitable snowman or whatever that is. But they have all that. That's cool. But to me, it's hard to really look at a team and figure something out when you have a 25-point comeback. You're good, but why are you good? I think Middle Tennessee, in that game, they were not as good as we thought they were going to be. You can't judge anything off an FCS team. We've been saying that this entire time throughout FCS. Whenever JMU is playing in the FCS, we're like, well, you can't judge the Dukes because you can't judge against an FCS team. And then the Texas State game, Texas State is worse than 5 other CAA teams. So you really can't judge on that. I think this is a legit game where if JMU goes out and dominates, I'm ready to say they're going undefeated.
Yeah, I think it's one that's definitely going to tell us more. And then I think like after that, then you're into like, all right, most, if not all of these games are going to be like fights. Like you're going to really have to show up. Georgia Southern's got some good stuff going offensively. Probably should have beaten Coastal. Probably should have beaten Coastal. Coastal had a nice finish there to beat them. Coastal a little messed up here. It like hurricane weather on Friday. And I think there were some rumors that Georgia Southern was like, let's just play the game on Sunday because we have to travel to you. And they were like, no, let's play Saturday night. I think they had to travel day of, and they still almost beat Coastal. But Coastal's doing anything they can to rack up those wins. And then like Marshall, Louisville, Old Dominion. But there's also, those games are like definitely tougher. I kind of think JMU is better than every team on the rest of the schedule.
I don't think ODU is going to be a tough game. Like, you keep saying this, and I
They just
keep
find ways
disagreeing.
to win, and it's like
Yeah,
got a
and they
little rivalry aspect.
yeah, and they don't know how to play offense.
They're not the best offensive team in the country, that's for sure. They're pretty average at everything. They kind of stink.
So, like, I also think JMU fans are gonna back out that stadium. Like, maybe I'm overselling JMU fans and underselling ODU fans, but I really think that's gonna become Bridgeforth East.
That'd be fun if it did, that's for sure. There's a long way to go, but there's a lot of reason to be excited because they have played very well through 4 games.
Yes, for sure. Anything else you want to add about Arkansas State? Maybe we want to touch on some undefeated odds, but we can get to that if you have anything else you want to touch on with Arkansas State.
No, yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on this because I didn't even notice it when I guess shared an article on the Bill Conley with ESPN ranking the undefeated teams. There's 16 of them. Has JMU 14th, but his SP Plus has JMU's percentage like odds of going 11-0 at 11%.
So the odds are at 11%, and I'm almost fully on board with that. I think that JMU has a really solid chance. And maybe you got to talk me down. And after we go from this one box, you can talk me down from this ledge. But I feel like we've swapped places here over the last week where I'm fully in on this Dukes team, and I think they can go undefeated. I think this is a big test this weekend, but if they can make it through Jonesboro, Arkansas, and take down Arkansas State, from there you're at Georgia Southern. And I don't think Georgia Southern is a good team. I think they're going to be favored in that. And by I think, they're going to be favored in that game. Against Marshall on homecoming, that's going to be an electric atmosphere. They're going to be favored in that game. Going to Louisville might be with a new head coach. Malik Cunningham is good, but this rushing defense of JMU is so elite. I think they're going to be struggling as a one-dimensional football team in that game. And JMU will probably be an under touchdown point underdog in that game. Then they're going to Norfolk and taking on ODU. They're going to be a favorite in that game. They then go and play Georgia State at home. That's the game we're going to be at. And because we're there, they're going to win. And then Coastal, I don't think Coastal is that good either. They're a fraudulent 4-0 team, 5-0 team. JMU fans are a little upset, calling Coastal not that great, blah, blah, blah. Coastal and JMU have very similar strength of records coming into the season. But Coastal, I think by that time, we'll know a lot more about that team. But I think JMU will be favored in that game. I don't see a scenario where JMU doesn't go undefeated.
Whoa, I love this hot take. This is my favorite take. Four games in. It's like we can't lose. We're gonna submit a waiver to play in the college football playoff, and we can't lose that. And we're in the college football playoff, and I can't see Bama, given what Cignetti knows about Saban.
That's what I'm saying.
In that game. Next thing you know, we win the championship. We're starting to run the state in the country. We get all the top 5 recruits. We're loaded up on 5 stars.
When Ewers transfers to us, he replaces Todd Centeio, still has 3 years of eligibility.
The biggest question now is, are JMU fans going to be complacent with this national championship winning dynasty? Will fans show up in Bridgeport after our 5th straight FBS national title? I don't know.
On a real note, 2 things. I do think I think 11% is a little high, but I think there's a real chance that JMU goes undefeated. Like, I think there's two tests left on this schedule, and it's at Louisville and it's against Marshall/Coastal. It's one of those 2 games. I don't know which one it's going to be, and I know the top out, but I think there's really 2 tests left, and they should win every other game. So that's why I think there's a solid chance that they go undefeated to finish the season. But also, I'm going to throw a question at you. Do you think this negatively impacts JMU's fandom in the future? Like, if they go 10-1, 11-0, 9-2, like, they have a really good record in a year that it doesn't matter. Do you worry if they then go, I don't know, barely bowl eligible next year?
I think the standard is the standard. And no, I think that it probably would, right? The expectation if they do it is like, well, some of it though, I don't think is that wrong of the fans. Like if Kurt Cignetti goes on the Jim Rome show and says, we want to play in college football playoffs, like, by all means, we're holding you to that standard. Like his opening press conference, he's like, we want to win FCS national titles. We want to not one, not two, not three. Like he definitely did that, like in one of his opening statements, was like, I want to win like 7 FCS national titles. So like when people were like, hey, that's the goal, that's the barometer, reasonably fair. It doesn't mean if JMU goes 7-5, they're unsuccessful. But I think the goal that they're kind of proving early on is like, hey, if it expands to 12, if you put yourself at the top of the Sun Belt East and the college football playoff expands to 12, realistically, you should kind of be in the conversation of like getting the top G5 auto bid. So I think that's, like the expectations are going to be absurd if they go 10-1, but some of it is sort of deserved. Like the culture is really good. The team's really good. They've done a good job recruiting. They've done a good job in the transfer portal. Like at a certain point, maybe those should be the expectations. I want to throw a quick question back at you here.
All right, I'm ready.
Because you were talking about undefeated and how they can't, lose any games. This is actually pretty interesting. Okay, so looking at this is the ESPN efficiency metrics. I don't know their exact formula, right? I'm sure they keep it all hush hush so that they can be ESPN or whatever, and we can't be them. But how many teams?
Weird.
Can you? I want to see if you can name. There are 2 teams in the Sun Belt outside of JMU that are in the top 70 offensively and defensively in efficiency. Can you name the other 2?
It's not App State.
It is not App State.
Because their defense is probably like 120.
Their defense is 96th.
Yep. So 2 teams that are in top. Georgia Southern.
Georgia Southern's offense is 45th. Defense is 122nd.
Oh. Wow. Is it Coastal?
Coastal 55th offensively, 89th defensively.
Who in the world is it? Marshall?
Marshall's actually a fascinating one. Marshall's defense they have is 12th. Oh. Their offense they have at 110th.
Oh.
They're both in the West.
Is it Louisiana Monroe and...
No, Louisiana Monroe, neither's top 70. It's really
who is it?
Quite a question. South Alabama.
South Alabama and Southern Miss.
My boys in Southern Miss are in there defensively with the offense due to the fact that they like literally can't throw a football. Is 100.
Okay, yeah. So South Alabama and West Troy.
It's a team. Yeah, Troy.
What?
Troy 65th offensively, 39th defensively, and then South Alabama's metrics are really good.
Yeah, buddy, that's my team. Go Jaguars.
44th offensively and 17th defensively. So they've been really good. And if they had gotten that UCLA win, they'd be looking pretty darn snazzy right now. And then JMU is 56th offensively, which is maybe a little low for what they're capable of. And defensively,
who have they played against?
No, I think like what they're capable of. I think they could be more efficient moving forward. Yeah, like 56 seems fair, but I think they could be better than that. And then defensively, they're first. So that's pretty hilarious. But no, I thought that was crazy because going off of your thing, it's like you think they could go undefeated, and it's not unreasonable because they don't play those 2, and like every team they play has a flaw. Like either their offense is bad or their defense is bad. Like they don't play a complete team.
And I'm being I know that came across as like hacky and a little bitty, and like that was kind of my point with what I was doing. But at the same time, there's a part of me that genuinely believes they could finish this season. I think at Louisville is probably their biggest test, and I don't think they're more than a touchdown underdog. And I think they're favored in every other game this year.
They're gonna have a pretty good.
They're gonna have I think if they win this week, we'll see that SP plus number jump to like 17-20%.
It also their SP plus ranking took a massive jump. I forget what it was.
Because of the Middle Tennessee win.
It was after that. It was this week when they lost. There was something that was like maybe it was waiting stuff from last season, and now that it's like only this season or something, it helped them. But they went from like 68 to 34 or something, and it was like, whoa, 34th, and they're almost ranked in the AP top 25. Like everything they're doing is it's pretty hilarious. And then you look even Louisville, their offense is actually outside the top 70. It's 73rd, so they've been inconsistent offensively. Cunningham's kind of day to day right now. Obviously, that's a while away, but he's already a little banged up, and they don't have a ton other than him. Really, they kind of stink. They just lost to Boston College, so yeah. I mean, 11-0 is the standard. Is the standard.
I hate you. Sorry, I'm crunching the numbers from last week's Sunbelt Pick'em as we get ready for that portion of the podcast.
We got to do Sunbelt pick. I want to talk broadcast a little bit.
Please do. Well,
You
start talking on this. I'm going to compile our numbers and then I'll be ready to jump in.
Yeah, I think this one it's only kind of fair because at least me specifically, really ragged on the App State broadcast, which I thought was not very good. Especially at times they were sort of unclear of like things that were going on in the game. And then they also had some weird like score bug things that didn't make sense. But like the rain covered cameras Saturday was not a great look. And I think it's kind of fair because ESPN Plus I think is a bigger deal. And when you're saying like on a legitimate television show, not sarcastically, your head coach says we want to play in the college football playoff, I think it is then also fair that like things outside of that are held to a certain standard. I think like the video team is killing it, like social media.
Yeah.
So like that's like, oh wow, this is amazing. Like we really feel like an FBS team. I just thought the broadcast was kind of maybe lower tier than expected, but also not that different than how it sometimes was at the CAA level.
This is also coming from two guys who worked on the broadcast for a year, each our senior year. So I feel like we bring a little bit of not expertise to it, but we kind of know what's happening. We know what's kind of happening on the behind the scenes aspect of it. And even if you just understand broadcasting in general, you kind of understand the behind the scenes of it. The fact that they had the rain covered cameras, that's just kind of unacceptable. And then not only that, you keep cutting to them. And I know the broadcast would have been worse off if you didn't have wide shots, but I think it was so rain covered that you had to run with your hero shots or your wide cam from end zone to end zone. Like we didn't need that wide shot at that moment. Like figure it out, clean it, wipe it after every something where you're not cutting to something in a third down play that at the time was a pivotal moment in the game. And I couldn't see it was an incomplete pass on the sideline. Jalen Walker's interception where he housed it for a pick six, you couldn't see where the ball was because the rain was covering the cameras so badly. And yeah, like you said, if your coach is saying we want to play in the college football playoff, I expect we're at the standards of those teams, the Ohio States, the Alabamas. Is that a pipe dream for the budget we're running with our broadcast? Yeah, but at least you can try and match that. The fact that, I know it can be so much better, and I have the expectations that it can be so much better. I just think the rain-covered cameras, man, like, I'd love to talk to whoever was doing that because what was the thinking?
Yeah, I just think it can be a little bit improved. So I think probably worth calling out because I know there's a lot of times like there's a road broadcast where like this is a joke, and then like if this was the road broadcast
we
this
would
week,
have
I
been
think
all
JMU
over
fans,
them.
yeah. So I think that's where it's fair to be like, all right, like maybe there's some improvement there. And again, it was also like we talked about it, like legitimate rain and wind and all that stuff. But also it was in the forecast for like a week. Like it wasn't like it was a surprise rainstorm or something. Like there was some time to prep and be like, hey, let's make sure that the camera isn't soaked.
It was so wet. That third down play, like early on, I think it was 7-0 and it was 3rd and 10, and you just couldn't see what happened.
Yeah, just hoping it's a little crisper at some games moving forward because I think it's one that it's kind of hard to get a spot that's not on. They obviously NFL Network this week, but sometimes it can be challenging like not to be on the streaming. And I think ESPN at times, I know Shane Metlin has said this, like we'll put a good game on ESPN Plus because it might drive some people to the streaming service. So like at the G5 level, you can't really have a lot guaranteed in terms of getting on TV. Like I'm pretty sure sometimes they have like Pat McAfee doing ESPN2 simulcasts of the ESPN game. Like, so they're not necessarily forcing G5 games onto this.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It would be cool. And really across the conference too, if broadcasts sort of step up a little bit and maybe raise the standards just a bit.
Yeah. The standard is the standard. You ready for the Sunbelt Pick'em?
Yeah. Yeah. What's up?
Well, we're having a little bit of side technical difficulties right now. Something is happening with Bennett. So, last week we had a 6-3 day, or last week our Sunbelt pick'ems. We both went 6-3. We hit on a few different ones. We both were on Army to take down Georgia State, which did not happen. Both were on App State to beat the Citadel, and boy, did they. They won 49-0. Both were on Marshall to take down FCS foe Gardner-Webb. Gardner-Webb 0-3 away, 1-4 on the season. Gardner-Webb gave Coastal a little bit of a run, but just haven't been able to make that up. I was on Coastal. Bennett is still bullishly on Georgia Southern, which is just mind-boggling to me. We both were on South Alabama. Those are my boys, the Jaguars. USA, baby, University of South Alabama. They're having themselves a solid season over there in the Sun Belt West. I was on Liberty. Bennett was on ODU. ODU, not great of a team. They lost 38-24, failed to score in the fourth quarter, only scored 7 second half points. Not great. Their quarterback did throw for 297 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Jennings, the third wide receiver for ODU, had over 120 yards receiving. I was on Louisiana Monroe to take down Arkansas State. Maybe Arkansas State's not terrible, but they're not good either. UL Monroe scored 7 in each quarter. Arkansas State did not, and they won 45-28. Western Kentucky, that's who I was on. They lost to Troy. Troy's now 3-2. Could be 4-1 if it wasn't for a miraculous Hail Mary against App State. And of course, we were both on JMU last week against Texas State. Almost forgot who JMU played. I was on it, JMU to win 28-3. Bennett was on it 35-17. Bennett, I guess we can say, was a little bit closer on that one, but since he's not here, we won't focus on that. So this week's Sun Belt Pick'em, before we jump into the games, as Bennett is away still for the moment, we have JMU at Arkansas State, Georgia Southern, Georgia State take on each other, App State, Texas State, Southern Miss, Troy, Coastal, UL Monroe. Going to be interesting for sure. And as we wait for Bennett to come back, a quick look around the Sun Belt standings. I think this will be fun to look at. Not a lot of conference games that have gone underway yet, as we're still pretty early on in the Sun Belt season, but just overall standings.
Don't tell me we have a cockroach. Do not.
I can hear that.
I unmuted. Okay. This is the best podcast ever.
So
all right, quick Sunbelt pick'em, and I got to handle a quick problem at home.
All right, we'll hit you real quick. You ready? I broke it down. We both were 6-3 last week. I don't know what our overall records are, but let's do this. Georgia Southern, they take on Georgia State.
Yeah, this one's actually kind of a fishy line. Georgia State -2.5. I'm back on Georgia State. I think Georgia State wins this game.
You're back on Georgia State. Wow,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go Southern here.
The line just feels fishy.
What's the line? The line's Georgia State -2.5.
Doesn't make any sense.
You're right, but I mean, you're also the one that have been saying that Georgia State's actually a good team.
And then last week I said that they suck. So it's a tough scene with them.
App State, Texas State.
I think App State pretty easily wins that one.
I agree. I think App State is the much better team against Texas State. App is a 19-point favorite. For what it's worth, JMU was a 22-point favorite, although JMU was home, so that might be the 3 points accounting for it there. Southern Miss at Troy. Your boys, 2-2. First Sunbelt game for them. Troy is a 6.5-point favorite.
Southern Miss, they are my boys.
But you're not going with your boys here.
I'll go with my boys. Southern Miss. I'm gonna go with my boys, even though I think Troy's probably a more complete team. I'll go with Southern Miss.
Yeah, Troy 3-2. One Hail Mary away from being 4-1. 2-0 in Sunbelt would be massive for them, but alas, they allowed a huge Hail Mary. Coastal at UL Monroe. Coastal is a 13.5-point favorite on the road. 5-0 the Chanticleers. I just was buffering there for a second. Taking on UL Monroe.
I think UL Monroe definitely covers. Tempted to have them as an upset play here. They're hard to get a feel for because they played Texas and Alabama, so I'm throwing those out. But
So
maybe a
they're
little better
2-1.
at home. I say Coastal wins, even though Coastal's a massive fraud.
I think Coastal wins too, but I like what you said. I think the play is UL Monroe plus 13.5.
Yeah.
I'd even wait a little bit for that line because I imagine the public is going to be all over Coastal because they're going to see 5-0 and think Coastal have that brand. I think that line might creep up to 14.5.
I
And
thought
if
it
it
was
hits,
earlier, and now I don't even know. It could be wrong. But yeah, if you can get it at the 2 touchdowns, and all you got to do is, you get a
Yep.
push. It was 2 touchdowns. That's a pretty good number.
yeah, I love the 14 number, so hit that for sure if you can wait it out. JMU, Arkansas State in Jonesboro. JMU an 11.5-point favorite. All of these odds provided by ESPN and Caesars Sportsbook, but you can find all of these odds and so many more on Bet Online. JMU, Arkansas State. Who do you got?
Incredible. I like. I have JMU winning this game 41-17.
Wow, you think this is like a blowout? I thought you
Yeah.
had faith in Arkansas State.
I did, and then the more I looked at it, I was like, oh, I just don't think they're good on defense, and maybe the offense isn't above average or just average. So I think JMU wins it pretty easily, and then I think the next few weeks they do get tested pretty significantly.
I like it. Okay, I'm going to go JMU 48. The fact JMU has put up 40-plus points in each game this season, except for the App State game, but so in 75% of their games, in 3 of their 4 of their games, they put up over 40 points, 40 or more. And this is not a much better Arkansas State defense. They're 125th according to EPA. Give me JMU to win 48-10.
Wow.
And that's it for the JMU Sports News Podcast. Anything else you got to add in?
No, I think that's it.
All right, go have fun with whatever life has thrown your way, and we'll be back next week. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter at JMU Sports News or on Patreon. We got a home on the web, www.jmusportsnews.com. A lot of great stuff, and subscribe to the newsletter while you're there. It's revived. It's back, folks, and it's bringing you all the JMU Sports News content you need. Until next week, see ya.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.